Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Devs Talk. Learners, we have started a Python developer training course. And this video is just a recording of one of the session of this particular course. If you also want to be trained as a Python developer, just let me know in the comment. I will add you to the group. Okay, so without any delay, let's get started with the session. So अभी तक हमने जो ट्यूपल को डिफाइन किया वो कैसे किया. इट इज़ अ डेटा टाइप इन पाइथन लाइक अ लिस्ट, और यू कैन से अ कंटेनर लाइक अ लिस्ट विच कैन स्टोर और कंटेन एलिमेंट्स, which can store elements of different data types, but the difference is list is mutable, tuple is immutable. It means once the tuple is defined, it can't be changed. We can't remove elements, we can't replace elements, or we can't add any element to tuple. Okay, got it? Now let me show you how and in terms of definition, how it is different from list, or you can say the conventions how we use. So what we do is to define a tuple, what we do, suppose we have an identifier t and we are saying t is, so you have to first initiate a tuple. We have to first start or make a tuple, right? So how you gonna make? You can make a tuple like by calling a tuple function like this. Okay, and once so in the tuple you can just pass the elements which you want to store like this. Okay, so the convention is, let me show you in the IDE. So if we have added this, okay, so you can just pass in the tuple function, or what you can do, you can just store in parentheses. So parentheses is the way to enclose the elements in a tuple. Okay, like we were using a big bracket, square bracket in list. So in list we use square brackets to enclose elements. In tuple we use parentheses to enclose elements. This is the difference. Okay, in terms of working, this is the difference. So what a tuple function do is it converts an iterable to a list. So suppose you have not a list, in a tuple, right? So suppose you have a list and you want that list to be converted as a tuple, so you just pass that complete iterable or the list, you can say, to the tuple function, then it will be converted as a tuple. You see this 1 3 4 5 are stored in a tuple now, and the other way is just define the tuple and just store all those elements which you want to store in a tuple in a parenthesis. Okay, so even you can just store a single element. Okay, but you have to make sure, because you can just store any string or integer also in parenthesis, but how you will differentiate whether it is a string, integer, or a tuple? The difference is, once you add a single element, once you are having a tuple with a single element, you don't store just the element itself, add a comma after that element, then it will show that it's a tuple, not a string or integer, right? So right now we have added 4 in the parenthesis. It means 4 as an integer is stored in enclosed in the parenthesis. It's not a tuple. Okay, because we haven't added a comma here. Now if I print, see, it printed only 4 as an integer, not a tuple. Now if I pass a comma here and now I run it, see, now it came as a tuple. So this is something which you need to remember all the time when you use tuple. If you are storing just a single element in a tuple, you make sure you add a comma after the first element. Okay, that basically makes it a tuple. Otherwise it will make it either an integer or a string, whatever you will be using, right? So this is the way to initialize or store elements in a tuple. You just need a parenthesis to enclose all those elements. Okay, and for single element you have to make sure that you pass you provide a comma after the first element, right? Now so as I said, you can store. So where it is useful to use tuple instead of list, right? So when you don't need to change your elements once you add tuple. Suppose you are defining some parameters in your project and that's not gonna be changed in between the processing and all. So you can just store all those things in a tuple, because that those attributes, those key and value, those values are not gonna change, right? So it's the best way is to use tuple at that particular scenario. Got it? Any confusion so far? Any of you, any confusion in understanding the tuple? Okay, okay. Now as I said, it can store different data types. So at first I stored 4. Now I'm saying I'm storing a string as hi. Now I am storing true, which is a boolean, and now I'm storing a so it means it can store any data type. List is also a data type, right? So in a tuple you can just add a list as well, like we added a nested list inside a list, right? You remember last session where I showed you like how we can store a list inside a list and how we can call those elements, right? So now if I store a list here with elements 1 comma 2 comma 3, now if I print, see this tuple is printed. Okay, so this is how you store elements in a tuple. Okay, so the thing which you need to remember is the parenthesis to store elements, and if you are storing just one element you need to add a comma there, right? Now since we have seen how to store the elements, so now we'll see like how you can create a tuple even without using the parenthesis also. So suppose you are saying, let's say an identifier t3 and you want to store 4 elements, right? So suppose we are storing a string called hello, then you are giving a comma, then you are storing 4, and then you are storing 1.6. okay, so all these 3 elements are separated with comma and they are not enclosed in parenthesis. Okay, but parenthesis is the convention to enclose the elements, but even if you don't provide it, the tuple will be created. Okay, now if I print t3 as well, if I just remove it from here, pass it here just below this line. Okay, see the line where I stored in t3 hello 4 1.6, how it came as a tuple, right? So this is also a way to initialize or to make a tuple, right? You don't always need a parenthesis to enclose the elements. The only convention is you must ensure that the bifurcation between the elements should be with a comma. Okay, there should be a comma. Even if I don't pass 4 and 1.6, even I just pass hello with a comma, it will print. See, correct? Got it? Okay. Fine. So this is how you can store. And now, so suppose you have 4 1.6 in a tuple t3. Okay, Now you want this element to assign to 3 different variables, let's say ABC, and I already have told you that you can assign 3 variables, 3 values in just a single line, right, like this. So now you need to pass 3 values. Okay, so this ABC are 3 elements which need to be assigned 3 values. You can just pass the tuple with 3 value. Let's say I pass 3. Now if I print A comma B comma C, see, A got hello, B got 4 and C got 1.6. All 3 got printed. It means the elements in T3 got assigned to ABC. Okay, one by one they got assigned to these 3 different identifiers. So you can use tuple to assign values to different variable in a single line, single statement, you can say. Okay, is it clear or any doubt? Yeah, tell me. No doubt? So now if you want to get a class, right, I mean the type of this, so it will, so as I said, in Python everything is defined as class, right? So you will get a class of tuple. Okay, if I print here type of, let's say, T3, see what it printed, class of tuple. So it is this one is a tuple. Okay, so you don't always need a parenthesis to enclose the elements of tuple. Okay, but it's better if you enclose them in a parenthesis. Okay, now so far we have seen like we can what a tuple is and how we can initialize or store elements. Okay, now since we already told it's an immutable object, it means the elements can't be replaced, removed, and an element can't be added. So we don't have any function to remove, replace or add, right? So the only thing we can do is we can fetch or we can access elements from tuple. Okay, so suppose in tuple T1 we have in tuple T2 we have 4, and then we have high, and then we have true, and then we have this list as well, right? Okay, now so same way, since like I said, string and list both are iterable, it means the elements inside them can be iterated upon. In same way, tuple is also an iterable. In the elements of tuple can also be iterated upon, right? So indexing, as indexing works in string and list, the same way the indexing works in tuple as well. So you all also already know like how we used index to fetch or to access elements from list or string, right? In same way we can access the elements using index in tuple as well. So suppose I say T2 and then I pass the index 2, so 3. Okay, now I am printing it. So what I am saying is from tuple T2 get the element at index 3. See, when I printed, so this is 0 at index 0, this one is at index 1, this one is at index 2, this list is at index 3. So it printed this complete list which is at index 3. So you know how, so you know very well, right? I mean how you can access the elements, right, from an iterable. Clear hai?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me just connect the laptop charger. Fine. So this way you can just access the element of tuple. And so suppose you access this list by index, giving an index 3. You want to access the element inside this list, which is 2. So what index this 2 has inside this list? 1, right? So after getting this list at 3, you just pass an index 1. So you will get the element 2. See, it printed 2, right? So you must know how to access elements using the indices, okay? And the one more thing which is very important, you should know, like as I said, tuple is immutable, it can't be changed, its element can't be changed. But if it has an element which is mutable itself, which is mutable means whose element can be changed, can be removed, or can be added, right? So if you see, tuple has an element list which is mutable, so you can't change the elements or you can't remove the elements of tuple. But if you have an element inside a tuple which itself is mutable, that the element inside that mutable element can be changed or can be added, right? So suppose if I add, if I say from tuple T2 access get me the list at index 3. Now the element at index 1, okay, what we have at index 1 in the list? 2. Change it to 5, okay, and now if I print T2, it will be changed, the list will be changed. See, earlier what we had 1 2 3 inside list. Now if you see, the 2 got replaced with 5. So you can do all those operations as you were doing with the mutable objects, even if you have it inside a tuple, okay? You got it? You can change, you can append, you can extend, all those things you can do with the mutable element of a tuple, okay? So it basically means you are doing all these things which are with an element of tuple which is mutable, not with the tuple, right? So that's why tuple is immutable, but list is immutable. Tuple is immutable and string and list are mutable, okay? So make sure you understand this concept, that immutable, tuple as an immutable doesn't mean that if it has an element which is mutable, it can't be changed, that mutable object can't be changed. This mutable element can be changed, right? Can be replaced or can be added with an element. Clear hai?
Yes.
Okay. So suppose I say T5 as an identifier, let's say T1 plus T2, and now if I print T5 here, see, this complete T5 stored all the elements of T1 and T2. So this plus symbol, what it basically did is it concatenated all the elements in one tuple of both the tuples, right? So this is how plus symbol works for tuple, and same way it works in list. And now if I say T6 equals T1 times 3, then all the elements of T1 will be added thrice. Let me show you. And now if I print T6, see, we got 1 3 4 5 1 3 4 5 1 3 4 5 3 times. So how these multiplication and addition works for this list and tuple both, okay? So it gets repeated if you add multiplication, and if you try to add different tuples with using plus sign, it will concatenate all the list in just all the elements in just single tuple, okay? Now coming to the methods, so we have seen like how you can access an element. Coming to method, we have two methods in the tuple. One is counting, like what is the frequency of a particular element in a tuple, and one is to get the index of a particular element. Okay, suppose we have this list, we have this tuple T2, correct, and T2 is like this. Now if I do T2 dot count and I pass 5, okay, and I am printing this count. See what it printed, the count is 0 because the 5 as an element doesn't exist in this T2. Even I added 5 inside a list, this one, because that 5 belongs to the list, not to the tuple. This list completely belongs to tuple. Okay, that's why it counted, it checked for 5 inside tuple 2 and returned us the count, which is 0. Now if I pass a count for 4, it will print us 1 because 4 is there, right, at the first index. See, we got 1. So this count function basically returns the count of a particular element or value inside the tuple. Now if I do print T2 dot index, so I just want to know the index of a particular element. I pass high, so I want to know the index of high. See, it printed 1 because the index of high is here 1. 4 is at 0 index and high is at 1 index. So these two functions are important in tuple. And now the thing which we need to learn is two things. One is the membership test and one is the iterating the elements, iterating through tuple to get the elements. So as I already have told you that membership test is nothing but to check whether an element or a value exists inside that tuple or not. Okay, so now to check for the membership, what you do is you check if an element, let's say if I check for element high, if high is, or you can just pass if high in tuple T2, it will check whether this element is in T2 or not. If it means if this condition, if condition will be true, it will print yes. Else if it is not there inside the tuple, it will print no. So this is what we say membership test. It will print yes. See, we got yes. Why? Because this high is there inside this tuple T2. If you see, got it. Now if I pass 5, since 5 is not there, right, so it will print no. Say it printed no. So this is how the membership test works. Okay, and now the another concept is iterating through the elements of tuple and getting it one by one. So you can just use a for loop. Let's say for an element, let's say a in tuple T2. For a in T2, this statement, what exactly this mean is, you are saying for an element a or value a in T2. T2 is what? A tuple. What we have to do? Get all those elements one by one and print the elements a, all the a's. It means all the elements. Now if I run this, see, it printed one by one all those elements. 4, high, true, and this list as well. So this is how we iterate through the elements in a tuple. This is how we do a membership test. these are two functions, count and index. And then we have seen like how we can change the elements inside a mutable element of a tuple. Tuple itself is immutable, but if it contains a mutable element, then the elements of mutable element can be changed or removed, replaced, or even we can add an element to that mutable element. You can assign three values to different values to different variables using tuple, and then you can also initiate a tuple without a parenthesis. These are the concepts related to tuple, and which is very important to learn. I hope you understand all these things. Any कौन सा? Okay. Okay. So if you see here, what we are saying is, I am just also writing in comment, we are saying for each, we are getting one element at a time using for loop. For each a, it means a is basically a value or element. For each a as an element inside T2, which is nothing but a tuple. Okay. So what exactly this statement means for a in T2? It just means that we are saying for each a which is an element in T2, which is a tuple, get that element and print it. So you are getting each element a one by one. So what it will do, it will check, it will get the first element 4 as a, come here, print, then it go again, check the element just after a, after the first element which it has returned earlier, it will check for the next element, it will go to high, then check it and print it. It will go next to true, which is a boolean, take it and print it, and same way it get the list and print it. Okay, clear hai or still you have doubt?
Clear.
Okay, fine. So why what are the advantage of using tuple? Since list is having a dynamic memory, it means since elements can be added or extended, it has an extra memory. So and if you see the tuple can't be changed, we can't add an element once it is defined. It means it has a fixed memory. Okay, so it basically means that tuple is faster than list and it has less memory than list. Okay, tuple is faster than list and it has less memory than list. Okay. And as I already said that you can use tuple if you want to store some data which will not change overall tree process, which we usually do while doing the projects. Okay, so this is all about the tuple. I hope you understood, and so I will be providing you this file so that you could practice, and I will again say that do practice on these concepts. If you don't, then you will not gonna learn all these things, and at the end you will end up with nothing. Okay, fine, then that's all for today's